They say every war leaves behind its ghosts. Not the kind that haunt you from shadows, but the kind that whisper through history, the ones no one remembers. In 1951, deep in the frozen mountains of Korea, one name was lost to that silence. A soldier who didn't retreat when everyone else did. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave. But when the shooting stopped and the snow settled, he was gone. Only decades later did anyone learn the truth because someone found his diary, buried beneath the ruins of a forgotten outpost. Inside, written in faded ink, were the words of a man who chose to stay behind. The entry began simply, "My name is Private John Miller. If anyone ever reads this, tell them I wasn't afraid." The story unfolded from there, in a land so cold that rifles froze and men died standing. The U.S. 23rd Infantry Division had been ambushed near a mountain pass called Hwasong Ridge. The Chinese army was closing in from all sides. Retreat was the only order. But someone had to cover that retreat, someone had to stay. Miller was the first to step forward. He was 24, quiet, always writing in that little brown notebook no one cared about. His commanding officer told him it was suicide. He just nodded and said, "Maybe, but somebody's got to slow them down." They gave him a single machine gun, a crate of ammo, and one night. By dawn, the rest of the unit would be miles away if he could hold the line. As his brothers packed up and left, Miller stayed behind, watching the flickering lights disappear into the snow. The silence that followed was heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. He wrote in his diary again, "I can hear them out there, hundreds of them. It's strange. I don't feel fear, just cold." He checked his weapon, lit a small fire under a steel helmet to keep his hands from freezing, and waited. Snowflakes drifted down, landing on his jacket, melting slow. Above him, the stars burned bright, indifferent, eternal. When the first enemy shadows moved across the ridge, he whispered, "Not yet." He waited until they were close enough to see their breath. Then he opened fire. The night exploded with thunder and fire. The mountain shook as one man held off hundreds of bursts of gunfire flashing through the snowstorm. He reloaded in the dark, hands numb, body shaking, but he didn't stop. For every bullet he fired, another man got one step farther down the mountain. Somewhere in his notebook, between the sound of explosions and screams, he wrote one more line. "If I fall, let the mountain remember me." The night over Hwasong Ridge burned like a storm. Miller's gun roared until the barrel glowed red. Each burst echoed down the valley like the heartbeat of a man refusing to die. He changed positions constantly, firing from different angles, making the enemy think there were dozens of soldiers still holding the line. In truth, there was only one. When the first wave broke and fell back, the mountain went quiet again, just the hiss of wind through shattered trees. Miller reloaded the last of his ammunition, breathing in the bitter cold. He tore a page from his notebook and wrote with shaking hands, "Still here. If they come again, I'll meet them the same way. If this is it, tell Mom I saw the sunrise once more." He pressed the page inside his coat close to his heart and waited. The second attack came before dawn. Mortar shells rained down, tearing through the snow. Miller was thrown back, his shoulder bleeding, his vision blurred, but he crawled to the gun and fired again. He could barely see the shapes in the storm, but he could hear them screaming. He kept firing until the sound faded. By sunrise, the ridge was littered with silence. Hundreds of frozen figures scattered across the slope. And in the middle of it, Miller, barely conscious, gripping his weapon like it was part of him. He didn't know that his sacrifice had worked. Miles away, his unit had made it to safety. The men who escaped told stories of how the gunfire never stopped, how it echoed long after dawn, and how they swore more than one man was still fighting up there. Miller's diary continued. "The sun's up now. It's so quiet I can hear my own heartbeat. I think the snow's trying to cover me. Funny, it feels warm now." His handwriting trailed off after that. Just smudges of ink. Days later, a reconnaissance patrol returned to the ridge. They found the gun empty, the barrel split open. Empty shell casings buried in the snow like brass flowers. But no body. No trace of Private Miller. Only his notebook, half burned, half frozen, lying beside the fire pit. The officer who found it said the last line was written in fresh ink, though the diary was already stiff with frost. It read, "Still standing. Still watching." Some swore the words weren't there before. The war ended. The snow melted. And the mountain that had once echoed with gunfire fell silent for years. Time moved on, new wars began, old heroes faded, and Private John Miller's name was buried under dust and history. But legends? They never stay buried. 30 years later, in the summer of 1981, a group of hikers crossed the same ridge Hwasong. The war was long over, but pieces of it still slept beneath the earth. They found rusted helmets, twisted metal, bones scattered by wind and rain. And then, halfway up the mountain, they found a small cave sealed by stone and snow. Inside lay the remains of a man in a tattered American uniform, a rifle beside him, a notebook clutched to his chest. The pages were almost gone, but the words that survived were enough to silence every voice in the room. The last entry read, "They stopped coming days ago. Maybe I stopped breathing too, I can't tell anymore. But if anyone ever finds this place, tell them I did what I came here to do. No one passed me. No one got through." The ink had bled where tears had fallen. The U.S. Army identified the remains as Private John Miller, the man officially listed as missing in action, presumed dead. When the news reached his hometown in Ohio, people stood in silence as the flag was raised in his honor. Children who had never heard his name before whispered it like it belonged to a myth. Years later, a journalist visited the ridge to film a small documentary. Locals told him something strange, that during heavy snow, you could still hear gunfire echo through the valley. Not loud, just distant, like one last heartbeat refusing to fade. They said sometimes when the wind was right, you could see footprints in the snow leading up the ridge, but never coming down. At the memorial built for the fallen, a plaque bears his words. "If I fall, let the mountain remember me." It does. Every gust of wind, every whisper of snow carries his story, the man who fought not for glory, not for victory, but for time. Time for his brothers to live. Time for others to make it home. And though his body may rest beneath that mountain, his spirit never left it. Because courage like his doesn't fade, it echoes. Some call it a ghost story, others call it faith. But to those who survived because of him, it's simpler than that. They just call him what he was, the man who stood alone,